Many of Fallout's creatures are the result of experimentation gone wrong. But what about ones that existed even before the bombs fell? I'm Mark from Digital Dissection, and today we tackle the origins of Fallout's Mirelurk and its diverse history across the franchise. In this series, we've had the chance to explore Fallout experiments like Deathclaw and Cazador, designed creatures that broke out of their captivity to take over various corners of the post-apocalyptic world. But what about creatures that formed through no experimentation at all? Over 200 years before Fallout's Great War, events were already in motion that began a critical change to the world's oceans. Between two of its largest energy corporations, General Atomics and Poseidon Energy, massive amounts of pollution were reaching the seas due to their emerging technologies in robotics and oil extraction. The cost of developing nuclear technology, robotics, and massive oil rigs caused major environmental consequences. But in terms of aquatic life, this was largely dismissed as fake news, mostly because mutated crab and lobster grew in mass between 14% and 12% respectively. The story that was happening on the ocean's floor was only the beginning, even in the wake of the inevitable war of Fallout's universe, as once the bombs did fall, it ended megacorporation pollution, but replaced it with massive amounts of radiation. The ensuing cocktail exacerbated the already mutated sea life, and out of the evolutionary chaos emerged the Mirelurks that would make their first appearance in 2008's Fallout 3. In order to give Mirelurk a deeper look though, it's worth breaking them into two generations, mostly because of their redesigns that occurred after their initial introduction. For starters, we'll organize them into the following: Gen 1, which includes those found in Fallout 3 and New Vegas, and Gen 2, which cover Fallout 4 and Fallout 76. The Capital Wasteland's Mirelurk population proved to be a worthy foe, particularly at lower levels. Armed with very durable shells, centers of gravity, and strength in numbers, the descendant of the Potomac River's previous crustacean life is widely thought to be a combination of the horseshoe crab and blue crab varieties. While it's easy to understand that pollutants impacted sea life growth, the idea of a hybridized animal coming from these two backgrounds may not make much sense, especially when you consider that horseshoe crab are more closely related to arachnids and aren't actually crabs at all. Looking at its overall appearance, however, the exterior shell and body of the Mirelurk absolutely represents the horseshoe crab, from the top of its head to its tail. The hard shell provides a very durable and tremendous defensive advantage, as its few weaknesses are under the shell itself, which includes its face that has very little recourse in terms of protection if it's accessible. Part of the Mirelurk's primary defense includes bum rushing its opponents, but in doing so will perform a headbutt-like motion, leaving direct access to this area. Where the Mirelurk picked up this tactic is hard to determine, but as we mentioned before, their true strength is that they're often not alone. Across multiple nests located in the DC area, many can be found clustered together, giving them a distinct advantage, particularly as standard Mirelurks and their hunter varieties can inflict heavy damage with their claws in close quarters. Hunters specifically are darker in color than their grayish-white counterparts, and have additional limbs used to rip enemies apart. Hunters are also far more aggressive, stronger, and can even knock back their prey with powerful swings of their arms. Within the region, they've shown a willingness to take shelter in abandoned buildings, sewers, and even the lower levels of Rivet City, proving to be a nuisance animal in a sense. Part of this is due in fact that Mirelurk at one point developed the ability to lay their eggs like a traditional reptilian, as opposed to crustaceans who can still carry eggs on their bodies, making their life cycle support much easier to manage, choosing where to create nests to offer eggs the best chance to survive. Overall, despite their characteristics, they're still widely consumed as a food source, much in the same way that blue crabs served the region of the pre-war United States. And even with their dangerous status, they are processed and sold by many different vendors. Part of this is due in fact to Mirelurk only requiring weeks to reach maturity, and there's a few reasons why they'd be able to make it that far. Mirelurk kings and Swamplurk queens. It's important to point out that Mirelurk tends to become a fairly wide-sweeping term the more you explore the Gen 1 concept of the creature. In comparison to the crab-like versions, Mirelurk kings and Swamplurk queens appear far more humanoid and are thought to represent the further evolution of snapping turtles, as opposed to the horseshoe crab and blue crab families. Over time, the Mirelurk royalty have evolved to lose their shells, opting for a more leathery yet durable skin, but still retain powerful arms and 2 sets of teeth. A distinct difference between kings and queens, however, involve a unique sonic attack that kings use to cripple the heads of its opponents, while queens evolve the ability to separately spit harmful acidic projectiles. A symbiotic relationship does exist, as we alluded to, between the crab-like Mirelurk and their snapping turtle cousins, as the unique groups, despite their evolutionary differences, seem to be able to coexist, often living within the same nests, and mutually ensuring that the other survives. There is one exception to this rule, however, which is the lake lurk variant of the king species, encountered within the New Vegas area and Mojave Wasteland. These do not seem to have developed the same relationship with other species, and are far more aggressive in nature. In the end, however, Gen 1 of the Mirelurk species outside of its established lore were a clear homage to horror icons, specifically the concept of a man portraying a monster in a rubber suit. Developer Jonah Loeb was inspired by 1950s monster films, and 1954's Creature from the Black Lagoon absolutely helped drive these inspirations. Within the universe of Fallout, however, it's possible that regional distinctions exist, and that a lack of integration between other populations and isolation drove the development of these mutations. Loeb himself, though, would change the Mirelurk design architecture post-Fallout 3 and New Vegas, as Gen 2 Mirelurk would take a drastically different direction. Within the regions of the Boston Commonwealth and Appalachia, the Mirelurk forms would be noticeably closer to crustaceans, but it would seem that the distinction of Mirelurk would take on a similar classification that grouped the creatures together in name only rather than individual genetics. The most commonly encountered Mirelurk in these areas, in contrast to Gen 1, stand on 4 legs as opposed to 2. They developed controlling arms, but has smaller clawed appendages for tearing flesh near its body. Overall, they still feature an incredibly durable shell, and similar weaknesses in terms of a lack of armor near its face. Like their Gen 1 counterparts, they've also seen variants that changed in color after exposure to Nuka-Cola Quantum, particularly its strontium isotope used in Quantum's production. From here, however, the Gen 2 Mirelurk showed considerably more developmental variation, with smaller juvenile forms that more closely resemble the mole crab, but also includes soft-shell varieties, and more dangerous subtypes with sharper claws, as well as heavily irradiated types unlike those witnessed in the Capital Wasteland and the Mojave. Also in contrast, the hunter varieties of Fallout 4 and Fallout 76 appear to be mutations of the local lobster populations, featuring highly armored heads that develop the ability to spit acid like swamp lurk queens. Further deviating from Gen 1 are the Mirelurk kings, who no longer share any relation to snapping turtles, and instead appear to be more frog-like in appearance, with evolved lungs that allow them to survive in water and on land. While physically they appear much more fish-like, they still retain sonic attack abilities they will use to cripple the heads of their prey, much like those that came before. They also didn't change like their Gen 1 relatives, who also live in tandem with the crab-like populations, but they have shown more durable variations in the Mirelurk Deep King, and have also experienced bodily changes after exposure to Nuka-Cola Quantum. One of the most notable differences between these regional variations, however, is the unique Mirelurk queens. These massive creatures can grow to an estimated 25 feet tall, and have posed considerable threats to humans, as a single Mirelurk queen drove the militarized Commonwealth Minutemen from the castle in 2240. One major difference is that the queens resemble isopods in terms of their overall look and appearance, but these highly formidable creatures have incredible damage resistance, and reign over all others in the Mirelurk kingdom. While much more rare to encounter, if you're not careful, you'll find out quickly just why they're the most dangerous and terrifying of the entire species. Overall, though, the Mirelurk of the Fallout series are not to be underestimated, and while its various different subtypes have found ways to live in relative harmony, we don't think that will ever exactly extend to humans. And with that, we thank you for watching this Fallout story on the lore and history of the Mirelurk. If you enjoyed this exploration of the mutated sea life, join us for more in our playlist that looks at all the Fallout universe has to offer, linked in this video. And until next time, pop culture nerds, keep on dissecting.